It literally has changed, for instance, my 13-year-old grandson, how he looks at the world. I mean, he's going to be a Marine. That's all there is to it. And he's going to carry that forward. We have to put this in them for us to continue to be the greatest country in the world for what we have in here. Land mass is in America. This is America. And this has given us such an opportunity to.
Speaking of family businesses, we have an awesome story here today of a family business, and I've been looking forward to this for some time. We have Karen Worcester with us, and she's part of a family business in Maine. If you haven't been to Maine, you should go because it's beautiful. It's really an incredible place to go visit. I first became aware of their work several years back. I brought in the Gold Star moms to present at my work and talk about what they do. And if you're not familiar with the Gold Star moms, you know, that's a tradition that goes back, I believe, to World War II, when folks put blue stars up in the windows when family members went off to war, and then when they received that terrible notification they wouldn't be returning, they would change that over to a gold star. And so we still have Gold Star mothers that particularly here in Kansas City, do a lot of work to recognize the families that have suffered that loss. And when they were in talking about that, they told me about this event they were involved in, Wreaths Across America, and that they would go up to Leavenworth and they would honor our veterans at Christmas with wreaths. And it sounded really interesting. And they said, come up here and join us. And it just became a family tradition for us. We've gone up to Leavenworth National every year since then, and it's really been a meaningful experience to go up there. And you're not just placing wreaths, you read about, you know, we take pictures of the headstones and we go back and we try to find, you know, what did that particular person do with their life, both in war and then after war. And it's really a really moving experience to be part of that. So Karen and her husband started this quietly many years ago, and so I'm looking forward to you telling us about that original inspiration to head down to Arlington National and how it turned into a national movement, Karen. So I'll hand it off to you. Let me first of all, let me make sure I've muted everyone, and that way we don't get screen interruptions. And now I think you'll have to unmute, Karen.
There, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Well, Wreaths Across America, as you said, Randy, we started back in 1992. It wasn't something that was planned. Our family had been in the wreath business for many years. And that particular year, we had some wreaths left over. It was late in the season. And my husband recalled a trip that he had made to Arlington as a 12-year-old paper boy and how it impacted him. He thought that it would be a nice thing to do as a patriotic person that he is, to, if he could get permission to take those wreaths to Arlington just as a thank you from the family. We had about 5,000 wreaths, which is about a truckload of wreaths. So we called some local politicians and they made a few calls, and lo and behold, to our surprise, he got permission to place the wreaths. So we have 6 kids. He threw a couple of the older kids in a truck that somebody volunteered to drive down, and they went to Arlington. And when they got there, they directed them to section 27, which is an older section of the cemetery. And they had a handful of volunteers. There were a couple people that met them down there from the Maine State Society to help them place the wreaths. And it took them all day to do it. And they weren't prepared for how it impacted them, because as they walked among the stones and they placed a wreath, every time they placed a wreath, you couldn't help but say the name. You read the name, you read the age. Sometimes, especially in that section, there were a lot of unknowns, and just you couldn't help wonder the history and the battles and what they might have gone through. So when they came home, and they came right home, went back to work, But every day they'd just recall a name that they read, and the kids were teenagers at the time, started looking up to see what they could find out. And it just impacted us so much that we decided that it happened just because we had that overflow of Wreaths the first year, but we saw what it meant to the kids and what it meant to us. So we decided to do it going forward. So from that point on, we made the Wreath special. Well, we did it as a family with just a few volunteers from 1992 up until 2005. And in 2005, when we placed the Wreaths, and it happened to be back in section 27 again, because over time we covered the whole cemetery, 5,000 at a time, but we were back in section 27. And Pentagon photographer took a picture of the Wreaths in the snow and put it on their website, and it went viral. And by January, and my husband, he's been in business forever. He has a computer. He did back then. He had an email. He never sent an email, still has never sent an email himself. He got about 6,000 emails in a very short period of time. People asking, is this true? Did you do this? Have you really been doing this since 1992? Can we do it at our cemetery? Can we help? And the mail started pouring in, and we don't even, people just looked us up, and they started sending money to Worcester Wreath Company, and we were a for-profit company. So we actually had to hire somebody to start answering emails and send in money back, and people continue to call. And I remember, and I had forgotten this till early this morning, I was thinking about talking to you folks today, that we got a call one day from a gentleman with an organization, Military Order of World Wars, which we had never heard of before. And he wanted to come to Maine to talk to us. And this was even before we came up with the concept of Wreaths Across America. But we were sitting in a little restaurant, and we told him we didn't understand what was going on, and I'm going to get emotional here, why people were looking to us, because we were just trying to say thank you, and why was this getting so much attention. And I remember him telling us, it doesn't matter why you're getting this attention. What's important is that you take this opportunity and you speak for the veterans and for the families. And it really hit us then that it was almost like a responsibility. So we started thinking then about what we could do. And by the time we got ready to go to Arlington in 2006, the outpouring was incredible. We'd been contacted by the Patriot Guard riders who wanted to know if they could escort the Wreaths into the cemetery. We'd been contacted by schools and communities between Maine and Arlington that could we just stop by and talk to the community about what we were doing. And we had by that point had gotten hundreds of calls, thousands of calls of people who wanted to tell us why it was important. And what we derived from everything that they were saying, that what's important about placing of the Wreaths is it gives us an opportunity to do three things. And that is to remember the fallen, to honor those still serving and the families, but the most important, to teach kids about patriotism and about this country, and about why it's important that they learn their heritage and their history. And so that kind of became our mantra. When we went to the cemetery in 2006, we actually took a whole week to go. We stopped at schools. We had an escort of Patriot Guard riders, and the state of Maine actually sent 2 state troopers with us, and I think we made 27 stops. But we also sent wreaths. We came up with an idea that we would have a wreath for each branch of the military and one for POW MIA. And so my husband sent wreaths out, and we needed somebody to help place them. So we worked with the Civil Air Patrol, which is an auxiliary for the Air Force. Our kids happened to be in Civil Air Patrol, so it was an easy group to reach out to. And that first year, 2006, after people found out, we did about 125, 130 locations. When we got to the cemetery that year, it was crazy. There were 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people. There were 70 news outlets from all over the country. it was just incredibly different, and everybody wanted to participate and everybody wanted to be part of it. And I remember that first year, it was special. It was solemn, but it was families. There were so many kids. There was so many kids there. And we were on, it was on a Thursday that year. Since then, they've moved us to the weekend because we do have such big crowds and disruptive to the cemetery. But we were on the side of a hill, and people were kind of mumbling and talking, and you could hear them talking to the kids and explaining things. And all of a sudden, we heard this clip clop of the caisson coming. And I'll never forget that moment. I still get emotional about it because everybody just stopped. Nobody had to say stop. Everybody just stopped on the side of this hill. And everybody turned around and just automatically put their hand over their heart, took their cap off. And as the caisson went by, it just struck me as so sad because there was the caisson and there was one vehicle, and I was quite close to the road, so I could look right at the two men, probably in their 80s, in the back seat. And when they looked up and they saw all of these people, all of these kids and all these people standing there saluting, they just started sobbing. And the impact of them knowing that everybody was there and people remembered, I'll never forget that. So that year was really important. We went home and we decided that it was going to grow and that we would form a 501c3. We wanted to make sure that, you know, that we were doing everything right and that everybody was being honored and that people could get wreaths. We couldn't give away millions of wreaths, but we came up with a way that people could sponsor wreaths at a low price. The trucking industry stepped up and said, hey, wherever those wreaths go, we'll take them for nothing. People just came forward in droves that wanted to help us. So we kind of went from that family thing to the 501c3. 2007, I think we placed about 10,000 wreaths. And this last year, we had 2,250 locations. And even with COVID, we placed 1.7 million wreaths, which is phenomenal. We have about 3 million volunteers. Every one of our locations is run by a volunteer. They set up the ceremonies. We have guidelines. Our guidelines are pretty basic, that the mission is to remember, honor, and teach. But we're non-political, which is very important, and we're all inclusive. And we respect each other, and it's all about teaching kids, the next generation, what's good about this country. So I'm often asked about the business plan for Wreaths Across America, and we basically listen. We listen to what the veterans wanted us to teach the kids. We listen to the Gold Star families. We have an MOU with the American Gold Star mothers, and when you do listen, and like Randy said, when you deal with these people and you listen, these are people who buried their children for this country. And when you listen to what they say, they want us to remember. But they don't want us to remember that their children died. They want us to remember that they lived, that they were productive, amazing people who thought that the concept of freedom was worth stepping up and sacrificing and knowing that they could die in the line of duty. We have a saying that we've kind of used as a mantra for several years now, and that is that a person dies twice. The first time when their heart stops beating and the breath leaves their body, but the final time is when their name is spoken for the very last time. And ever since that first trip to Arlington, my husband has always had that one request, that as we place the wreaths, we say the names. So the impact of, like I said, even last year, to say 1.7 million names on the same day, to raise those memories up and take the opportunity to teach kids about the people who have sacrificed to give us freedom, it's pretty impactful. So we're just grateful that, you know, we just hang on and try to keep up and keep going. The education piece has become very important. We have an education trailer that goes all over the country. Last year, we anticipated we'd do about 10 stops, and we had requests. We did 70 different locations all over the country so people could come on the trailer and not just learn about Wreaths Across America. Wreaths Across, Placing the Wreaths is kind of like the catalyst to teach, but we talk about character and courage and like I said, the lives of those who sacrifice. We talk about families and how families serve. We do radio programs to teach. Last year, when we realized that there were going to be so many kids home at schooling, that we thought it would be a good way to introduce the Gold Star mothers. So we did a series with the American Gold Star mothers talking about the lives of their kids that had served and passed on. And they always talked about, you know, from the time they were little kids and what they were like and the path that took them to, you know, enlist. So many of them after 9/11, which, you know, now we're a generation away from kids knowing what 9/11 was. So it becomes more important than ever that we teach just how fragile freedom is. And that's what Wreaths Across America is. And so for clarity, it started as the Worcester Wreath Family Project, but now it is a 501c3. We do have a board of directors. It's made up of Gold Star families and veterans and Civil Air Patrol and teachers and people that just help us develop the mission. And we're real excited this year. We're going to be working with some other organizations and sharing some of their teaching materials. And I recently had the opportunity to talk to Roger Donlin. Roger Donlin was the first Medal of Honor recipient from the Vietnam War. An incredible person. And he received his medal back 50 years ago. So he's had a long life of speaking to kids and sharing. And he stressed that to me. I said, what do you want us to talk to the kids about? And he said to talk about character and courage and the country in a light that makes them proud to be Americans and proud to be patriots. And I do think we need to do that, is to share the best of the country, and the best of the country is represented by the people that have served for our freedom. So that's how we came to be Wreaths Across America. And I'm happy to answer questions about leadership. I have a high school education. My leadership skills came from having 6 kids and 9 grandkids and just working, in fact, in our own factories. My philosophy on leadership is that I would never ask anybody to do something I haven't done myself, and that there's no such thing as a job that's beneath anybody, because everybody plays a part. And I think my other big thing on leadership is that you have to listen. You have to listen to the people that you're leading, and you have to listen to the people that are in the direction that you're trying to lead people to. And so it's pretty simple. But like I said, I'm happy to answer any questions, either about Wreaths Across America or anything else that I can share.
If you have questions, type them in the chat and we'll unmute you. There are a lot of folks on here. I know that know Colonel Donlin. He lives out near Leavenworth.
Oh, yeah,
Incredible person. Yes. So I know there are folks on here, and I saw a lot of applause and nods as you were talking. So you were hitting some really important topics as you
I talked to Roger and Norma the other night. By the way, Roger's, if you know Roger, you know that his wife's story is also an American story, that she was actually born in a Japanese internment camp during World War II. Many kids today don't even know what that was or that time in our history. So she's been an incredible voice in helping us teach. I'm schooling her a little bit because you guys know I, of course, being from New England, still am a Tom Brady fan. And of course, you know, what's going to be happening here in a couple of weeks. So we rib each other a little bit about that, but incredible folks. And they have just dedicated themselves to teaching. The Medal of Honor Society has a great teach-in site as well for anybody that wants to share that information. That is one of the other things that we decided as an organization early on when we formed our mission to remember, honor, teach, was that we would work with other groups and other organizations. because it would be disingenuous of us to say that this is our mission, but we're not going to go near other people doing the same thing, because that just would be wrong. So we work with the Gary Sinise Foundation, we work with Wounded Warrior, we work with the VFWs, we work with all of these people, and are able to share the like-minded missions. And we also came up with a program, and it was really meaningful last year with a lot of organizations that had a lot of difficulty staying afloat because of the COVID problem. And we have a program where a local community, for their local cemetery, they can go out and get a wreath sponsorship. And it's $15 will place a wreath at any one of our over 2,500 locations. But if a local group like a VFW is out gathering those sponsorships, they retain $5 of the $15. And we had a lot of VFWs, a lot of American Legions, a lot of even Boy Scouts, and DAR is another great supporter of us. And they use those funds to put back into civic organizations at the local level, so that Wreaths Across America also helps in supporting living veterans in the area as well. So that's been a really good thing for us, because it's brought so many people together. We like to say that we connect the dots of like-minded people, and then come together in December to share the mission to place a wreath.
We've talked quite often on this show over the past year about the need to build a broader sense of purpose into your business, and people who have done that. Mike Meyer on here, wove this gift of music for kids into his family's business, and has seen a big impact in the community and on the business. If you go back and think about Worcester Wreath, how has this helped Worcester Wreath, just as far as you've got this sense of purpose and people want to join the team and want to be part of this?
Well, full disclosure, Worcester Wreath has to bid on the contract. It's a contract that goes up for bid every 3 years, because when we formed the 501c3, we wanted to make sure that everything was done correctly. And so it is a bid process. And so they're very happy to still have the bid. It's a lot of hard work. I'll tell you, this last year, it was a lot of hard work with all the different rules and regulations. I would say that it's been such an amazing thing for to see my grandkids and my kids have the opportunities to meet people from all over the country. It literally has changed, for instance, my 13-year-old grandson, how he looks at the world. I mean, he's going to be a Marine. That's all there is to it. He's had the opportunity to meet Gold Staff families, and he was interviewed about 2 years ago about his participation in Wreaths Across America. And he was asked what was the most important thing he'd done in his short life. And it was 3 years ago that he actually met the family the day before we went into Arlington. So he's able to do the last leg of the convoy with us. And we've become very close friends with a Gold Staff family, the Harrises, that are actually from Maine. And they just love Miles, and he's always been around them. But they asked him that day, because Scott Harris, the Gold Star dad, is a truck driver, and he actually was driving the lead truck of Wreaths going into Arlington that day. And they asked my grandson to ride in the truck with them, and he sat in Scott Harris's lap as they drove into Arlington National Cemetery. And he'll never forget that. And in some way, I just wish that we could touch all kids that way, so that it's personal. That's why we ask kids to say the names. And that's why we ask everybody that gets involved to see beyond the placement of the wreaths. We're not decorating graves. We're really trying to make a connection between all of us and all of that sacrifice, and the people that have given so much. Other times when my kids have been with me at Arlington National Cemetery, and I remember a few years ago that we were down in section 60, and section 60, for most people know that it's where a lot of the current conflict burials are. So there are very young families there. And it's not uncommon during the holiday season to see these moms or dads with little kids with their lawn chairs in the winter, sitting at these graves because that's where their heart is for the holiday. So I remember we had placed all the wreaths and we were walking through section 60, and this woman recognized us and she came over. I've told the story a million times, but I never will forget it. She had a little boy that was probably 4, and he was all bundled up in this snowsuit. He could just barely move, and it was cold. His nose was running and his little cheeks were all red. And she had a baby that was less than 2 on her hip. Same thing, snowsuit and rosy cheeks. And when she saw us, she just started babbling, thank you so much. That what it meant to these kids to have all these people come and talk to them. And then she said, do you mind if my son shows you his daddy's grave? And yeah, so there's that. So we walked to the grave, but what I remember so much about it is you see the picture, like the one behind me, and the wreaths are all placed so nicely against the stones. He wanted daddy's to be different. So when we got to the grave, his was placed flat on top of the grave. So daddy's stone was different. You don't forget that when you have that interaction, and it happens at every cemetery, not just at Arlington. When people come together and they make new friends and they make friends with people who have lost loved ones, and you run into people that probably served with your uncle or your dad or something, and you start making these connections and it becomes personal. And I'll tell you, the best hope for our future is to make our past personal and to make it personal for our kids and to help them understand what is so good about us. We live in a country that has its issues and has made its mistake, but what can't be said about us is that we didn't always try to do better, and that the best of us stepped out to lead the way. And that's what we need to build on. So that's how it's impacted my family, and I think others that are involved.
See hearts there from Mary. Yeah, you're touching hearts here today. I'm going to try and share a photo. If you can see that, this is just this past December. We were out at Leavenworth, and you can see everyone's masked up, and still you see the same care of folks taking time to straighten up the ribbons and beautify the wreaths and lay them with care. But that was a really big pivot for you to adapt to a situation where a lot of people would have canceled. I mean, I know it had to be really hard logistically to figure out how to pull this off, and yet you guys were determined to do it.
It never crossed our minds. And of course we got kind of thrown for a loop when late in the day we were contacted. I think it was on a Monday, late afternoon. We actually had just had meetings with ANC staff and things were a go. And then we heard late one afternoon they weren't. And it was like we were shocked. And as you can imagine, our PR people were getting hammered and we didn't have any answers because we hadn't talked to them. And I never thought for a minute that it wouldn't happen, but I was shocked. I wasn't able to reach anybody that afternoon. And I was shocked when I got up and turned on the news the next morning. They were talking about it. They hadn't told me, so I know I'm trying to, but what really struck me is that people didn't want to do something else, and we weren't going to let it happen. So it got difficult. It got really difficult for the logistics team because, for instance, the national cemeteries, because they could only have, 10, 15 people at a time, they couldn't take their deliveries all at once of wreaths. So what used to be for one truckload to go and drop wreaths off, and they had to make 3 deliveries over 3 days. And you have to remember that people doing this at cemeteries, they're volunteers. And then they found out that, in some of these cemeteries place 40,000 wreaths, and how are they going to place 40,000 wreaths, 10 people at a time? And just the spirit and the ingenuity. And so we started having meetings like this, and we had, for instance, one big cemetery in Florida. Their numbers kept getting cut back, and then they decided they were going to do a drive-through. It was going to save all kinds of parking problems, and so they had their volunteers glove up, and the family would roll up, and they'd give them 3 or 4 wreaths, however many were in. They'd go to the cemetery plot they were going to and place the wreaths, and then go out the other side. If they still needed help, they'd drive around, and they'd do it again. They did shifts. They signed up, and they adapted, and they overcome, and they all worked together. And it was different, and it was hard. But when we had our after action, the stories that people told about different things, and lots of times they'll call them God winks, and just different things that happen. Things happen for a reason. We learned an awful lot. We learned an awful lot about how much it means to the families, how much it means to the communities. And yeah, it was hard. I'm not gonna lie, it was hard, but we got it done. And the biggest piece that we missed was seeing the number of people, and even on the convoy, people came out there. We went through communities where there'd be 1,000 kids on the side of the road waving American flags, all spaced out with their masks on, but they were still chanting USA. And we need to hear that. We need to hear that no matter what we go through, that we're going to get out on the other side, and we're going to wave the flag and be together. It was a good year.
It's awesome that you stuck true to your purpose and were able to pull it off. And it was very organized here. I mean, they were really super organized and super safe, and it still was a great event, different than usual, but still an awesome opportunity. Maybe a technical question here. How long does it take to grow a tree to make a wreath, and how many wreaths do you get per tree?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't know that. I do know that there is a lot to it. And a lot of things changed when we said, because I'm not sure everybody knows this, but 3 years ago now, we actually were able for the first time to get wreaths to Normandy, which was a big deal. I mean, can you imagine many families who never even had the opportunity to get overseas to those burials? And we've always included with just ceremonial wreaths the overseas sites, but to actually be able to get to Normandy. But even just sending wreaths all over the country and being responsible for them, you have to make sure that the materials that you're putting in the wreaths are not diseased, because you know this, but people like to sue over everything. And so you have to have materials that are completely disease-free. It's a lot different growing a tree to make wreaths than it is growing a Christmas tree. Just things that we've learned is that if you get a tree to 15 feet high and you cut off the top, that the growth, instead of going to the top, goes out into the branches, and it makes healthier branches so that the wreaths stand up better. So just a lot of things that we've learned. And the balsam that the Worcester Wreath Company use, they're all natural stands of balsam, and then they just go in and take good care of it and clean out some of the hardwood and make sure it's disease-free. So it's quite a process. And the farm is about 17,000 acres, and it's a year-round process just to keep the brush healthy and prepare. And like bows are made all in this country, and so they're making bows, and we have 25 little old ladies that make bows all year long, and it's a labor of love for them. But it's great for the community. Everybody in this little community, very proud to participate. So
I think Mike has a question about Arlington. Mike, you want to unmute?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I'm not sure I can speak too much because I'm a crier. I have a friend who's, they lived on Arlington, and she's part of a group called the Arlington Ladies.
mm-hmm.
And I wondered if you knew about that group and if you interact with them, and kind of you could explain what they do.
Well, we have in the past, but the Arlington ladies have not been to Arlington this year, like so many others. And I do think they participated on Wreath Day. But yeah, they're like the mom group that oversees Arlington National Cemetery and takes care of the needs there. And they've been around for a long time, and they are an important part of what we do. We've done some stories on some of the Arlington ladies in the past. And yeah, there's a lot of emotion there. They do a lot for people. Nobody's ever alone at Arlington, I think. And that's a big part due to the Arlington ladies, because they do look out for everybody that's there.
I believe Joel has a question.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Karen, for what you guys do. What's the best way for people around the country to get involved locally and then to share your message?
Well, we have wreathsacrossamerica.org. Everything is on the website. And I hate to say it, but social media has been a really good friend to us. And we get to share a lot with young people on social media. So on our Facebook pages, we share a lot of stories of character, courage, doing series, on the Medal of Honor people, and having an opportunity to meet so many of those folks. So there's many ways. And if you can go to the website and find out if we're in your community. We're in every state. We're in most of the national cemeteries, a lot of the state cemeteries, but we also do local cemeteries that have as few as 10 veterans. Wherever a veteran's buried is where we want to place wreaths and to remember. So we're always looking for sponsorship groups. If you've got a civic group that you want to do fundraising, all of it's on the website. So the website is the best place to go, but there's always a lot of activity. We're doing on February 3rd, I think it is, we're doing the story of the 4 chaplains from World War II, which is an incredible story of a ship that was torpedoed carrying soldiers, and the 4 chaplains that were on this vessel handed out life jackets until they were gone, and then they stood together, and they were all different denominations, and it's an incredible story, and the stories from the survivors of how these men affected what went on that day. So we're doing that. Teaching piece is coming up next week. So there's always things you can share, but volunteer on many levels, and you can find it at wreathsacrossamerica.org.
Thank you very much.
Some great comments on here. Victoria, who has a grandfather and grandmother at Arlington. That's have you been there? Have you visited?
Had to unmute myself. Yes, actually, I moved here from Kansas from Virginia. This is my mom's parents, and they were both from Fairfax County. My grandfather was a doctor there. He was actually a U.S. Army surgeon in Normandy. So he was there. So he had lots of amazing stories to tell about the things that he saw and the sacrifices that people made. Yeah, so going to Arlington, walking the cemetery is amazing. I was there for the funeral, for the burial, and to have taps played and horse-drawn carriage going by, and everything that's there, just it's peaceful, and it's just something that just tears at your heart when you look around and you walk. And Karen was talking about going to the old section, and my brother and I've been there many times to just walk and look, and all of a sudden when it hits you, and as me as an adult when my grandparents passed away and I had children, and thinking about a parent losing a child and never knowing where they ended up, where they are, and what happened to them. And I remember taking that feeling with me the last time that I was there, and I left, of the sacrifices that just not just that person who died for our country, but their family that lost so much and will never know and never did know.
No, Victoria, as you're talking, I had a memory that I haven't thought about it in a long time, of being in Section 60, and it was actually the year, I think it was 2013, that we actually placed our millionth wreath, which is was a while ago because we do more than that in a year now, but we got a call from Walter Reed that there was a wounded soldier that wanted to come over and meet us and place a wreath on the grave of some of the men that he had served with that had died. So we said, of course. We're also with Mary Byers, Goldstown mom of Josh Byers, another incredible story. So we said sure, and we got down to section 60, and there was a car sitting at the edge of the curb, and there was a man in uniform, and he had like one leg was kind of out of the car. I wasn't prepared. When this young man got out of the car, he had lost his leg and part of his arm. He looked like he walked right out of a World War II. He was one of the handsomest men I've ever seen and one of the saddest faces I've ever seen. And Mary, Goldstein mom, just embraced him. And what hit me so hard was where he was. You know, he was still in the healing process. As we went to place a wreath for his friends, they hadn't even, the stones weren't set. And they were the burial plot, and there were like 6 little cards because they were all buried together because the remains were so scrambled. And watching Mary as a Goldstein mom try to help him heal, watching him reach out to her, and then having them reach out to us, just, and it was too much. For me, it was too much. I had to walk away. I couldn't handle it. And so I walked off quite a ways to compose myself. And as I did, another Goldstein mother who'd gotten to be a good friend came up. She wrapped her arms around me and spoke in my ear, and she goes, "And now you know." And now I know. And as we know, and as we participate in this, and as we watch the healing, as we bring kids so that these people like the Harrises can talk to my grandson and know that my grandson knows about their son, and he's going to carry that forward. We have to put this in them for us to continue to be the greatest country in the world for what we have in here. Land mass is in America. This is America. And this has given us such an opportunity to share in such a tangible way with this silly wreath that we just place this wreath, but it's something you can put your hands on, you can touch it and feel it, and it's alive. And it's a catalyst to bring this together. And I share what happens at Arlington, but I'm sure Randy or the Donlins or anybody at all these other locations will tell you the same kind of stories that I can. And it's a responsibility that we pass on. We have a theme every year, and this year I was watching General McConville. He was on Chris Wallace, I think. It was a show, and they were talking of his Veterans Day, and he's certainly he's the chief of staff of the Army at this point, and certainly a honorable hero in his own right. And he said that what kept him going was to live up to their legacy, the legacy of the everyday man that got boots on the ground, that served. And I just think that's what we need to do. And that is our theme this year, to live up to the legacy and to share the legacy. And that's what makes it important.
What you're doing is powerful, and it's it really does touch your heart. You know, when we're out at Leavenworth and we see a mom and young kids kneeling at a grave of a dad that'll never come home, you can't help but be impacted personally by that when you have a chance to see those moments and to just be grateful, you know, for what we've got and the opportunities we have. And I love what you said about America's in here, because that's true. Despite what social media tries to tell us, we're filled with goodness. And I know on this call, the good that people are doing every single week, we just have incredible people that are
Three
doing
years
so much to
ago,
help each other.
3 years ago, it was a perfect day, weather-wise in Arlington. And I stood on top of the Women's Memorial and watched 90,000 people. 90,000 people come through the gates at Arlington. And I remember thinking that they were left and right and Christian and atheist and black and white and just all came. You know, they all came. And everybody was talking, and it was this just spirit of togetherness. And it was wonderful. It was just wonderful. And for that day, we came together and did what we needed to do, which was to remember, honor, and teach. And it's sad that we have to go through the things that we do as a country, but the core of the country is good. And if we start, I've listened to a lot of people lately, as we all have, and you know, I think if we just start looking at each other and talking to each other, we're so much more alike when it comes to the common values and loving the country and what we want our kids to know and carry on. And I think we just got to remember that and look back at the good and then carry it with us into the future. Make sure our kids understand it, that diversity is fantastic and love of country and love of each other is important. And that's what we try to do. Remember, honor, and teach.
Thanks for that. I'm sure you have things set up with the kids and grandkids where Wreaths Across America will continue on.
They better.
That is awesome. Any last questions or comments from anyone? I know people have been really impacted by your words today.
Hey, Randy, this is Rick.
Yes.
Karen, I just want to say thank you. And Randy, thanks for inviting me my first time with the group. Karen, I just can't wait to get involved. So, you know, and I think for me, the education is the part that you do, because once you have that experience, I think it just stays with you. My wife and I volunteer with another organization that breeds dogs for soldiers with PTSD to donate them to be service dogs. And I got to sit down and talk to one of the gentlemen who was in Afghanistan, was blown up basically, and received that. And then you hear that story, you think of things a lot differently. And when you're talking about what you guys are doing, you know, that wreath represents a lot. And you know what, I'll remember the wreath, you know, at every wreath that's placed, just those stories, how they come back to you, you know. But if every one of us could get that experience, and it's a lot different, you get caught up in your life, and next thing you know, you're going to work, you're doing this, you're going here, you got to get all the things that get in the way of really what's important. But once you have that experience, it doesn't go away, it sticks with you. And I think that's what helps you take that and carry it on to others. So what you're doing is great, and I definitely will be getting involved.
Thank you. I will say this, and something that we teach kids. We started out and we gave wreaths. We had wreaths to give. And so it was a natural thing for us to do. The trucking industry, we could not do what we do without the trucking industry. And I'll tell you that they stepped up, and I think this year it was 97% of all of the wreaths that were delivered by volunteer organizations. And at a time when, again, COVID impacted, because the trucking industry was really working hard and long because of the supply chains and, you know, the boots on the ground, people that come together and do different things. You know, some people, the wreaths have to be disposed of, and they clever ways that people have come up with to do it. Everything from, there's a woman out in Leavenworth that feeds them to her goats. I have to admit, I feed the wreaths to my goats when we're done with them, and then they're burned for fuel in some places. And we just had somebody come up with this incredible idea that they use them in fish habitat. They actually put them on these poles and lower them into water, and they make a fantastic fish habitat. But what we try to tell the kids is that give of what you have. You know, it's like, I call it the little drummer boy thing. If all you got's a song, sing. You know, if all you've got's being kind, just be kind. But contribute in some way to the greater good, which is who we are. And that's how these ceremonies all over the country come together, is people giving what they have to give and holding each other up that way. So it's important what you do, Rick. Every bit of it helps and every bit of it heals.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's go to Mary.
You know, I'm probably going to be Mike Meyer's cousin today because I've been a little teary-eyed. But one of the things can you hear me okay?
Mhm.
Okay. Is the compassion that you have. And I was just sitting here thinking, it's like, you know, I don't have any people in the military. And then I thought, well, that's a lie. I have twin uncles that served, and then my stepdad served, my mother's older brother, you know, in New Orleans served, but we never got to hear their stories. You know, we never got to hear, you know, the patriotism that they had, or, you know, any of their experiences. And I think we've missed that. And I don't know if it's just an African American culture thing, you know, but we don't talk about that. You know, I can't think of any of my friends whose, you know, uncles or dads or anything, sir, but I know that they've got to be there. We've got some stories out there that haven't been shared. And I so appreciate you getting me all teary-eyed this morning. And getting those juices flowing. But I absolutely appreciate, you know, what you're doing. And I would love to connect with you, Randy, and see what other things, you know, we can do from a community to really go out and support what they're doing. This is just amazing. Just amazing. I'm done, and I've got my tissue ready.
Oh, thank you. You know, Mary, I had a moment. My dad was in World War II. My son-in-law is a Marine. My grandfather's both served. But I will tell you, I had a reality moment, and it actually was from Mona Gunn, who's oh God, I'm going to mess it up. Was it the USS Cole that was torpedoed? My history is, her son was on, and she is African American, and her son, oh boy, I'll tell you, she's amazing. She is just a walking history, gospel, just love this woman. But she said to me, you know, you may not have a relative that served, but they all served for you. And we're all in this together, and we have to remember that too, because it's why we remember every soldier wherever they're buried, because it doesn't make any difference which coast they're on, they all serve for the country, and that is us. And patriotism starts at home, to community, to country. Everybody that served, they served so we could be free. So we're all family, and learning their stories is so important. And the more you learn of their stories, the prouder you become. And it's just good stuff for people to learn. It really is. A lot of these stories too, you will find on our Facebook page. You know, I can run on. You can just tell me to be quiet anytime, but it's little things that matter. We have a thing that we do now every Tuesday. We go out, and rain or shine or snow, as case is often up here in Maine, to carry on the work of the Freeport Flag Ladies. Now, the Freeport Flag Ladies were just a group of elderly women who, on 9/11, seeing things unfold on the news like the rest of us, were just overcome with not knowing what to do. So they went to their basement and they dug out their flag, and they went to the hill in Freeport, Maine. And just so happens the hill was right across. If you don't know anything about Freeport, Maine, you probably know about LL Bean, and it's their flagship store. So these ladies are like right on the hill across from the LL Bean store. And they just started waving that flag. And they didn't know why. They just felt compelled to do it. And then as the cars were going back and forth and people were trying to, you know, get back and forth and go home, or just with that lost feeling, seeing those ladies wave that flag, it just meant a lot. And so people were blowing the horn, and those ladies made a commitment that that's what they could do. And for every Tuesday morning for 18 years, which just to begin with, I think it's longer than 18 years since 9/11, but for 18 years they did that. And then 2 years ago, they had to retire because of age, illness. And we kind of watched to see if somebody else was going to, you know, pick up the torch and do that, and they didn't. So I asked my husband, I said, you know, we got to do something about this, right? And he said, yeah. And he says, I'll put up a flagpole and you do the rest. And I made the calls, and we were good friends with the flag ladies who'd been at a lot of events together. And so when their last flag waving they had on one Tuesday, and the next Tuesday they came to Columbia Falls, Maine, little tiny community, about 600 of us here. But we took up the charge of waving that flag. Well, through social media now, when we wave that flag, and I will tell you what, it was 22 degrees when we waved the flag Tuesday, but we were out there. We had 10 or 11 veterans that show up faithfully, and we say the Pledge of Allegiance live on Facebook, and we literally have thousands of people that come on and say, I'm here, I'm waving here, and I'm saying the Pledge of Allegiance here. And so every Tuesday morning we do that. It's amazing what little things can do to bring people together and what that means. And you only have to look around, and you can find something in every community that can help us build it back, you know, to reach out and embrace each other again. And I call it polishing up our patriotism, because we need to do that. And it feels good to do.
Mary is so fast on her internet searches. She's already got the link for us here of Freeport Flag Ladies. So that is a cool story. I had not heard that. So I look forward to reading a bit about that.
You know, we have a lot of up here in Maine. I think maybe because it's cold and dismal up here in the winter, we don't have a lot to do. But we also had the Bangor troop greeters who, because so many of men and women going overseas, they have to go through Bangor International Airport. And so, oh my word, for 20 years now or more, the troop greeters, whenever there's a plane coming or going, they're there in the airport. And now they have a little museum there, and they have coins from all over the country. And but it's like that. I think, you know, when you look around in every state, there are still people, and patriotism is still alive and well. May not get the attention we want it to, but we know it's there. And like I said, it's groups like this, it's all the groups that we work with, we just keep connecting the dots, and we have a good base. We just got to sing up a little louder and let our voices be heard.
It was awesome to have you with us. It was really inspiring. And I know I'm with Mary. We're going to work harder to figure out what kinds of things we can do together to impact the community. Well, and to kind of tie into next week, I have Tony Dessert, and he's a longtime musician. He's built a tremendous career out of music. And when we talk about weaving that sense of purpose into your business, Mike Meyer has done that with his music and his family's music business, also a multi-generation business, but they use their business to raise instruments and go collect instruments and refurbish them. And so Tony is going to be performing at Mike's fundraiser, and Mike also does some things for the troops. So Mike, you want to tell a little bit about that?
Okay, big deep breath so I don't cry before I start this. I love, Karen, listening to you, because every time I start telling a story about what we do, I tear up like that. So I've learned that if I just tell everybody I'm a crier, then I usually don't cry. So, but the charity that Randy keeps referencing, we started, was called Band of Angels. So I've been down the road that you're now down to, which is starting a charity out of an existing business and tying them in together. And we collect used instruments from the community, and we give those to students in financial and emotional need. But one of the other things that we do is all the guitars that are collected through Band of Angels go to Guitars for the Troops and the Wounded Warriors program. So it's a really neat way that it ties into today. And a week from Saturday, February 6th, we are having our charity gala fundraiser, which would always be in person. And we always bring in a national artist to perform at that event. This year, we can't have the event. And we were going to bring in all 10 of the artists, or all of the artists from the last 10 years that we've had perform at our events. And so we couldn't do that. So I called each of them, and they recorded videos from wherever they were in the United States and sent them here, which we are now editing into a 2.5-hour concert that we want to share with all the people that are on this Lessons in Leadership call. Randy Powell made a generous contribution to the event. And so we are going to send the link to everybody that's in this group so you can watch the event for free. It'll be next Saturday night, February 6th at 7 p.m. You'll also get to see the stories and meet 3 kids that we've helped with instruments. And so it'll be a really, really cool thing. The artists are, the speaker next week is Tony DeSere. He was our first artist at our first gala. I say if you take the way that Michael Bublé sings and Harry Connick plays the piano and meld those together and then sprinkle Frank Sinatra over the top, that's Tony. And he's a very good looking dude. So all the ladies on the call will probably be very impressed with him too. And his voice is just like amazing. So he's managed to make a career in the music business, which is not easy to do. So he has a great story about that, but also is going to be a performer on the gala. Some of the others are a Kansas City native, Mark Pender, who was the trumpet player with Bruce Springsteen and on the Conan O'Brien show for 20 years. The bass player and tenor sax player for Beyonce. Stevie Wonder saxophone player will be one of the guest artists. And a guy named George Shelby, who's an artist in LA. You've probably not seen him, but he's always one of the guys playing on the Grammys. He's been on every movie soundtrack you've probably heard and tours with amazing people. So they're really a neat group. I will warn you, some of the videos are them dealing with whatever they had to deal with, which was the school gymnasium. And then some of them did some other stuff and are more produced. But it's really kind of neat to see behind the scenes and just listen to great music. It's the night before the Super Bowl. And we would love for you all to join us and see what we're doing. And Karen, back to you. Thank you so much for what you do. And you know, that's a good stopping point.
Thanks a lot, Mike. You know, we've got another Mike on here, Mike Kinney with Warriors Ascent, and they do a lot of work with veterans as well. And you probably know Colonel Donlin as well, don't you, Mike?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. He's the honorary colonel of the Special Forces Regiment. I don't know if people know that, but yeah. Great.
So when you talk to Colonel Donlin, let him know he has a lot of fans here. Yeah.
Hey, he is a great man. I'm in love with him. I just tell my husband that. He's a perfect man. If there is a perfect man, he's close. He's a wonderful person. Many things to teach.
Well, it was awesome to spend time. We had several first timers here. And so that was great. All of you that joined us, hope you keep coming back. It's a lot of fun to learn from each other. And these are always great experiences. And thanks, Karen, for joining us. It was awesome to have you with us today.
Thanks.
All right. Well, everyone have a great week, and we will see you next week with Tony DeSere.
Thank you guys so much.
Bye, everybody.